Kale Reiner trudged through the ashen streets of Port Exos, boots heavy with dust that never seemed to wash away. 5 years of breaking rock for minerals had carved hard lines into his face and thickened his shoulders into the shape of a man built for endurance rather than comfort. His jumpsuit was mustard-colored once, but today it bore a map of stains, grease, sweat, and the gray film of the settlement's endless or dust. The day's labor clung to his body like chains. Each step jarred his knees behind the dented metal pad strapped there for protection. Each breath carried the taste of stone. At his hip, mining gear rattled against his belt, a cruel reminder that tomorrow would demand the same. In one hand, he carried a container of protein stew. It was supposed to resemble an earth dish, but it had the flavor of cardboard drowned in seawater. He'd eaten enough to take the edge off his hunger, and now the lukewarm sludge was just dead weight. At the mouth of a narrow alley, Kale stopped at the sight of the battered community feeder bowl, a dented bit of metal where colonists left scraps for the half-wild creatures that prowled the settlement. He knelt, scraping his leftovers into it. The stew landed with a wet plop, mixing with whatever had already been offered. Better than wasting it, he muttered. A faint sound broke the silence, shuffling feet, a whisper, words in a tongue he didn't recognize. Kale's hand instinctively moved toward the utility knife on his belt as he turned. 3 figures stood in the gloom. Small. Thin. Not animals, not pests. Children. They huddled close together, pale violet skin dulled by grime, tangled crimson hair catching faint light like fading embers. Their eyes, wide, luminous, anxious, fixed on him. Their ragged dresses were little more than patched scraps, and dust clung to them as it clung to everything in Port Exos. They weren't human. But they were unmistakably girls. And they were eating from the feeder bowl. "Hey," Kale said softly, removing his hand from the knife. "You don't need to eat that." The smallest of them flinched, shrinking back behind the others. The tallest, still barely reaching Kale's chest, stepped forward protectively. "We not steal," she said in broken standard, voice trembling but sharp. "Just, hungry." Something twisted deep in Kale's chest. He had seen hardship on this world, but children eating from an animal's dish struck him harder than a collapsing tunnel ever could. "You're not in trouble," he told them, crouching down to seem less threatening. "But that food isn't good enough for you." The 3 exchanged wary glances. At last, the tall one spoke again. "No parents. Just us." Kale rubbed a rough hand over his stubbled jaw. He was no caretaker. Just a miner. Yet leaving them here? Impossible. "I'm Kale," he said, forcing a small smile. "What are your names?" The tall one hesitated before answering. "I am Leora. These are Celia and Maris." She pointed to the middle and smallest girls. "Well, Leora, Celia, Maris, how about we find you some real food? Maybe clean clothes too." Their eyes lit up at the mention of food, but suspicion quickly clouded them again. "Why help? What you want?" Leora demanded. Fair question, Kale thought grimly. In Port Exos, nothing came free. "Because you're kids," he answered simply. "And kids shouldn't eat from bowls meant for strays. No strings attached." He rose slowly, gesturing toward the main thoroughfare. "There's a clothing shop nearby. We'll start there. Then food." The girls whispered together in their own tongue, a series of clicks and lilting sounds Kale couldn't follow. At last, Leora turned back. "We go. But we run," if bad things. That's fair, Kale nodded. I'd do the same. As they walked, passers-by stared. 3 alien children trailing behind a human miner was hardly a common sight. Kale kept them close, protective instinct settling over him like a cloak. The shop they reached was squeezed between a pawnbroker and a shady clinic. A sign glowed faintly, stellar threads, letters written in standard and alien script alike. A bell chimed as Kale pushed open the door. Inside, the shop was everything the streets were not: bright, clean, organized with precision. Rows of clothing hung neatly for all species that wandered Port Exos. Hello. Kale called. A curtain parted, and a woman stepped through. She shared the same violet skin as the girls, though hers gleamed unblemished. Her hair was a deep cascade of red, falling over her shoulders like fire spun to silk. A long, form-fitting dress of midnight blue caught the light with threads of silver, and her violet eyes widened at the sight before her. "Can I help you?" she asked, melodic voice edged with caution. Kale became acutely aware of his sweat-stained clothes, the dust in his hair, the grime under his nails. He cleared his throat. These girls, they need clothes. And maybe a wash. Her gaze shifted to the children, and the caution in her face softened instantly. She knelt gracefully, speaking in the clicking, lilting tongue the girls had used earlier. The children's responses spilled out in a rush, their eyes brightening, their small hands reaching for her. The woman's expression grew solemn, then almost reverent. She looked back at Kale with a new weight in her gaze. "My name is Serenia," she said quietly. "These children say you found them at the feeder and offered to help." Kale shrugged, uncomfortable under the intensity of her look. Seemed the right thing to do. In Port Exos, the right thing is rarely done without reward, Serenia said softly, studying him. "What do you want in return, human?" "Nothing," Kale said firmly. "They're kids. They needed help. That's all." Surprise flickered in her violet eyes, then something like approval. She rose smoothly and turned back to the girls. "Then let's get you clean, and dressed properly." She led them toward the back, her crimson hair shifting like flame in the light. Kale caught himself staring before tearing his gaze away. Left alone among bright fabrics, he wandered, clumsy and out of place. He belonged among rock, not silks. Yet as he listened to the sound of running water and the girls' sudden giggles drifting from the back, Kale knew he had stepped into something larger than a kind gesture. Something that would tear his gray, routine life apart. And though he didn't yet understand how, he was certain of one thing: he wouldn't be walking away. Behind the curtain of stellar threads, steam curled through the small washroom. Serenia worked carefully, her hands gentle as she scrubbed years of grime from the girl's delicate violet skin. The cleansing oils filled the air with a faint floral scent, masking the ever-present dust of Port Exos. "How long have you been on your own?" she asked softly in their native tongue, combing through Maris's tangled red hair. "Since the raid," Leora replied, her voice small despite her protective stance in front of her sisters. "2 cycles ago." Serenia's hands paused mid-motion. "Raid? Where?" "Not settlement," Leora said, eyes dropping to the floor. "Our home. Big home, with guards and servants. Bad men came. Fire everywhere. Mother told us to run." The word struck Serenia like a blow. She pushed back the curtain of crimson hair at Leora's neck, and her breath caught. There, hidden beneath layers of dirt, was a faint sigil, an intricate crest marked into the skin itself. Trembling, she checked the others. Yes. The same pattern, subtle but unmistakable. Her heart pounded. This was no ordinary mark. It was the royal crest of House Veyron,
the bloodline thought slaughtered during the Azuran coup 2 years past. The bloodline Serenia had once only heard about in whispered tavern tales. Your daughters of House Veyron, she murmured, struggling to keep her voice steady. Leora's violet eyes snapped up, sharp and wary. You cannot tell, she whispered. Bad men still looking. Serenia exhaled slowly, nodding. I won't tell. But understand, if anyone finds out, bounty hunters will swarm like carrion. You'll never be safe. The girls nodded, solemn beyond their years. Serenia's heart clenched. They were royalty, princesses, heirs to a legacy that could sway the galaxy, and yet here they were, half-starved, eating from an animal's dish. When she finally led them back out into the shop, dressed now in clean tunics of soft fabric, they looked transformed. Their crimson hair gleamed, their pale violet skin seemed almost radiant, and their wide eyes carried something fragile, hope. Kale stood awkwardly near a rack of heavy coats, clearly out of place. When he turned and saw them, his face broke into an unguarded grin. Well, look at you three, he said. Feeling better? Maris smiled shyly, the first real smile she'd dared in days. Serenia placed a protective hand on Celia's shoulder. They'll stay with me tonight, she said. Above the shop. Perhaps you might join us for dinner. We can decide what comes next. Kale hesitated only a moment before nodding. Upstairs, Serenia's apartment was a world apart from the harsh streets below. Warm amber lamps glowed against sleek furniture and woven tapestries. Kale shifted uncomfortably, brushing dust from his work-stained jumpsuit. I should have cleaned up first, he muttered. You're fine, Serenia said, carrying a pot from the kitchen. Her violet eyes flicked over him with something unreadable. Honest work leaves honest dirt. A shower later, Kale emerged changed. He'd shed the miner's armor of dust and grit, wearing only a plain undershirt and trousers. His frame looked broader, cleaner, his features sharper without the grime. Serenia caught herself staring, her voice huskier than before. You clean up well, human. Kale chuckled. That's generous. He ducked his head, embarrassed. Can I help? Call the girls, she said, arranging dishes on the small table. The meal was simple but rich, spiced stew with flavors Kale couldn't name but devoured eagerly. The girls ate with practiced manners, though hunger urged them to hurry. Their posture, the way they held spoons and cups, the quiet formality in their speech, all of it hinted at an upbringing far removed from Port Exos. Afterward, Serenia leaned back, eyes lingering on Kale. The children giggled in the other room, playing with a small hollow puzzle. Leora, would you and your sisters watch some vids while Kale and I talk? Serenia asked. The eldest gave a suspicious squint. Grown-up talk? Yes. Leora considered, then nodded, gathering Celia and Maris. Once they vanished into the spare room, Serenia's demeanor changed. Her voice dropped, tight with tension. They're not ordinary orphans, Kale, she whispered. They are the lost princesses of House Veyron. Kale nearly choked on his drink. They're what? Serenia leaned forward. 2 years ago, the royal family was massacred in a coup. Everyone believed the bloodline destroyed. But these three, they bear the family crest. It's undeniable. Kale sat back heavily, mind reeling. So we've got 3 royal fugitives eating dinner in your apartment. He shook his head. Perfect. You must understand, Serenia pressed. If word spreads, hunters will come. The bounty on them could buy a moon. Kale met her eyes, his voice flat. You think I'd sell them out? They're kids. I'm not a monster. The fire in his tone startled her. She reached across the table, laying her cool violet hand atop his rougher one. Thank you, she said softly. Kale's gaze locked with hers. For a breathless moment, the room felt smaller, charged. His fingers curled slightly around hers. But before either could speak further, a shrill chime cut through the air. Serenia's security system. Someone had entered the shop. Her face paled. I'm not expecting anyone. She activated the wall monitor. Grainy footage revealed 3 towering figures prowling among her displays. Scaled, green-skinned, ridged foreheads, mercenaries. Rex, Serenia whispered. Bounty hunters. Kale's jaw tightened. I'll handle this. They're armed, Serenia warned. So am I. He patted the utility knife at his belt. That's not enough against 3 Rex. Her hand pressed against his chest, lingering despite urgency. Got a better idea? He asked. She bit her lip, then nodded. We go down together. I'll say I'm closing shop. You'll be my companion. Kale raised a brow. Your hired muscle. Or your boyfriend. Whichever convinces them, Serenia replied, a faint blush warming her violet cheeks. He smirked faintly. I can work with that. Before they descended, Serenia pulled him close, pressing her lips to his in a kiss brief but searing. Her cool skin tasted faintly sweet. When she pulled back, her eyes burned with more than just fear. For authenticity, she whispered. Kale swallowed hard, trying to steady his pulse. Right. Authenticity. Together, hand in hand, they stepped into the shadow of danger waiting below. The lights of stellar threads had dimmed to evening mode by the time Kale and Serenia descended the stairs, their hands still clasped tightly. To the mercenaries prowling the aisles, the touch looked casual, but Kale felt the weight of it, both reassurance and a silent agreement that they faced this danger together. I'm sorry, gentlemen, Serenia called smoothly, her voice carrying the effortless poise of someone who had lived in finer halls. We're closed for the evening. The largest Rex turned, reptilian eyes narrowing. His scaled skin shimmered green under the shop lights, and his heavy hand rested near the disruptor at his hip. Just browsing, he rumbled. Heard you might have rare merchandise. Kale stepped forward slightly, angling his body between Serenia and the hunters. Like she said, we're closed. Come back tomorrow. The Rex's gaze settled on him. A human. His lip curled. Unusual company for an Azuran. Not unusual in my bed, Serenia replied, slipping into a sultry tone that made Kale's ears burn. She pressed herself closer against his side, one hand tracing idle circles over his chest. Humans have qualities we find irresistible. The mercenaries chuckled darkly, though their leader's sneer deepened. We're looking for 3 young Azurans. Pale skin, crimson hair. Seen any? Only Azuran here is me, Serenia said coolly. Unless you count minors sniffing around for off-world pleasures. And she doesn't share, Kale added with forced bravado, offering a cocky grin. The tension hung like a storm cloud. One of the Rex shifted, moving toward the stairs. That's private, Kale said sharply, stepping into his path. The leader's eyes narrowed. Check upstairs, he ordered. It all broke in a blink. The Rex leader drew his disruptor with startling speed, firing a bolt of searing energy. Kale yanked Serenia sideways as the blast tore through a rack of jackets, scattering burning fabric. He hit the floor rolling, knife already in hand, the metallic snick of its blade locking into place. Bad move, he growled, springing forward. The Rex fired again, but Kale's reflexes, honed in collapsing tunnels, saved him. He ducked low, slammed his shoulder into the mercenary's scaled chest, and drove him backward into a display stand. With a savage slash, he cut across the alien's gun hand. The disruptor clattered to the floor, green blood spraying. Another mercenary lunged, but Serenia was faster. She grabbed a heavy bust from a mannequin display and hurled it across the room. It struck the alien's temple with a sickening thud, staggering him sideways. The third Rex opened fire wildly, bolts carving smoking holes into the shop. Kale dove behind a counter with Serenia, shards of fabric and splinters exploding around them. The girls, Serenia gasped. Stay down, Kale barked, vaulting over the counter before she could protest. The wounded leader roared, clutching his bleeding hand, but Kale pressed the attack. His knife moved with surgical precision, stabbing into soft gaps between scales, slashing across the alien's leg. Years of forgotten training surfaced, movements too sharp, too disciplined for a mere minor. The second Rex recovered and charged. Kale ducked, slashing behind its knee before driving an elbow into its throat. It crumpled, gasping. The third leveled his weapon at Kale's back. Serenia raised the fallen disruptor, steady hands glowing faintly with the strain of alien strength. Her shot was true. The mercenary spun, a smoking hole in his shoulder, before collapsing. Silence fell, broken only by Kale's heavy breathing. The shop lay in ruins. Shredded fabrics, shattered displays, scorch marks across the walls. Kale stood amidst the wreckage, a fresh cut bleeding down his cheek, his chest heaving with adrenaline. He turned, eyes wild, until they found Serenia. Only then did they soften. "You hurt?" he asked hoarsely. She shook her head, still staring at him in astonishment. "Where did you learn to fight like that?" Kale wiped his blade clean before folding it back. "Earth Special Forces. Before the mines. Long story." Serenia stepped closer, her violet eyes wide, her voice hushed. "I'd like to hear it someday." Then, more urgently, "But right now, we must go. More will come." Kale nodded. 5 minutes. Pack what you need." They hurried upstairs, where Leora, Celia, and Maris waited in a panic. Serenia soothed them quickly, helping them into warm cloaks. Kale knelt before the girls, lowering his voice. "Bad people came looking for you," he said gently. "We have to leave Port Exos. Do you understand?" Leora's jaw tightened, her young face far too old with experience. "We go with you." "And Serenia." "Yes," Kale said, surprising himself at how natural it felt. "We'll protect you." Within minutes, they slipped out the back of the shop into the frigid night. Kale led them through crooked alleys, his miner's memory of every shortcut proving invaluable. Serenia kept the younger girls close, while Leora walked at Kale's side, her sharp eyes alert. "You fought like royal guards," she said quietly. Kale glanced down. "You remember them?" "I remember everything," she replied with eerie composure. "Mother said never forget who we are. Even while hiding." His throat tightened. They had lost everything, yet clung to dignity. His resolve hardened. Whatever the cost, he would not let them fall. At the spaceport, Kale bribed a weary dockworker, slipping him credits to ignore their presence as they boarded a cargo shuttle bound for Helion Station. The girls curled together on a pile of sacks, exhausted. Serenia sat close beside Kale in the dim maintenance alcove, their shoulders touching. Her cool hand found his. "Thank you," she whispered. "Not a chance I'd walk away," Kale replied, fingers tightening over hers. For a long heartbeat, silence wrapped them, broken only by the shuttle's engines. Then Serenia leaned in, crimson hair falling to veil them both, her lips brushing his. This kiss was longer than the one before, deep and hungry, charged with more than survival. When they parted, breathless, Kale managed a crooked grin. "Quite a first date," he murmured. Serenia laughed softly, tension breaking for the briefest of moments. "Humans. Always finding humor in danger. Call it one of our better qualities," he said, thumb brushing her cheek. As the shuttle roared into the sky, leaving Port Exos behind, Kale knew his solitary life was gone. In its place was something terrifying, something exhilarating. 3 princesses to protect, and a woman who had somehow made the world brighter with a single touch. Helion Station loomed ahead like a giant metal spider suspended in the void. Its 8 docking arms reached outward, wrapping the dark as though catching prey. The cargo shuttle latched onto one of the outer arms, the tremor of magnetic clamps running through the hull as engines powered down. Kale guided their small group through the bustling cargo bay. Dock workers shouted over the hiss of pressure seals, traders pushed carts of goods, and security officers scanned faces without care for anyone who looked too poor to cause trouble. Perfect cover. The girls clung close, their new clothes helping them blend in, though their crimson hair and royal bearing still made Kale uneasy. "Keep your heads down," he murmured. "Just a few more minutes." Helion's lower decks were a labyrinth of narrow corridors and packed markets. Stalls overflowed with spice jars, mechanical parts, holographic trinkets. The air was thick with scents of grilled meat and ion fuel. Kale moved with confidence. He had worked here once, patching ventilation systems and scrubbing coolant leaks for half a year. Every shortcut, every blind corner was still etched in memory. "You know this place well," Serenia noted, brushing his arm as they passed through a crowded corridor. "Maintenance contract," Kale explained. "Not glamorous, but you learn all the ways to vanish." They found lodging in a modest hostel where transient workers often stayed. The room was small but clean, with 2 narrow beds and a washroom hardly larger than a closet. The girls immediately piled onto one bed, their closeness instinctive. Leora's watchful eyes scanned the door while Maris curled up against Celia, already half asleep. Serenia sat beside Leora. "You're safe here, little one." Leora hesitated, then looked to Kale. "I must tell you why we came to Port Exos," she said formally, her words carrying the weight of something memorized. "Mother told us, if bad things happen, go to Helion. Find the vault." Kale frowned. "Vault?" "A royal vault," Serenia breathed. "Here. On Helion?" Leora tapped her chest. "I know codes. Mother gave them to me. Inside, credits, weapons, and proof." "Proof of what?" Kale asked. "Proof of who killed our family," Leora answered, her voice steel-wrapped in a child's tone. The room fell into silence. If true, that vault wasn't just a lifeline. It was dynamite. Enough wealth to shield the girls. Enough evidence to expose the usurpers. Before Kale could speak again, a knock rattled the thin metal door. His hand went straight to his knife. Serenia gathered the girls behind her, disruptor in hand. Kale checked the tiny security viewer, frowning at the figure outside. An elderly alien, leathery gray skin, white hair standing out like frost against dark features. His clothes were practical, worn, but well kept, like a captain who had seen years of void travel. Kale cracked the door. "Can I help you?" The stranger's amber eyes crinkled with familiarity. "Name's Captain Orin Voss. I believe you're transporting precious cargo that interests me greatly." Kale stiffened, tightening his grip on the blade. "I don't know what you're talking about." "3 young Azurans," Voss said calmly. "Last of House Veyron. Hunted by half the bounty hunters in the sector, including the Rex mercenaries you left bleeding on Port Exos." From behind Kale, Leora gasped. "Captain Voss." The old alien's stern face softened instantly. "Princess Leora, you've grown. You know him?" Kale demanded. Leora nodded quickly. "Mother's pilot. For secret journeys." Voss dipped his head. 30 years I served House Veyron. Since the coup, I've searched for signs of survival. The galaxy whispered you were gone, but here you are." Serenia's violet eyes narrowed. "If you are loyal, why approach us now?" "Because I had to be sure," Voss said evenly. "And because Helion is already compromised. The usurpers have agents here. They've doubled the bounty since your escape." "Convenient timing," Kale muttered. "Necessity, not convenience," Voss countered. I have a ship in the private bay. I can get you out before they lock the station down. Kale's jaw clenched. We need access to the vault first. The princess says it holds proof. Evidence. Voss's amber eyes gleamed. Yes. The emergency vault. Queen Avalora was meticulous. She would have prepared for betrayal. He looked directly at Leora. You have the codes, child. She nodded. I remember. Then we must hurry, Voss urged. Security grows tighter by the hour. Kale and Serena exchanged a long, loaded glance. The question hung unspoken, trust him, or risk losing everything. Finally, Kale stepped aside, letting the captain in. But hear me, Kale said flatly. If this is a trap, I'll cut you down before I draw a breath a second time. Voss met his gaze without flinching. I would expect nothing less from the man who faced 3 wrecks with only a knife. He extended a hand. Your reputation precedes you, Kale Reiner. Kale didn't take it. Not yet. Within minutes, the group slipped into Helion's maintenance passages, Voss leading with quiet certainty. The station hummed around them, pipes groaned, vents hissed, distant engines thrummed. They moved like shadows, bypassing crowded checkpoints and heavily guarded lifts. Serena kept the girls close, her free hand brushing Kale's arm whenever the corridors narrowed. Leora clutched a small data crystal, her lips moving silently as though repeating her mother's instructions. The vault lay ahead, hidden behind the facade of a financial office on level 3. But Kale's instincts churned. He had lived too long on the edge to mistake calm for safety. Something was coming. And whatever awaited in that vault, wealth, evidence, or doom, it would decide the fate of more than 3 frightened children. It might decide all of theirs. And that's where our story brings us, friends, the weary miner Kale, the fierce shopkeeper Serena, and 3 orphan princesses of pale violet skin and crimson hair, standing on the edge of a revelation that could shake empires. What began as a small act of kindness at a dirty feeder bowl has turned into a desperate race across stars, chased by mercenaries, shadowed by betrayal, and bound together by unlikely trust. Stories like this remind us how fragile survival can be, and how one choice, one hand extended instead of turned away, can change everything. Kale's fight is no longer just his own, it belongs to those children, to Serena, maybe even to the memory of a murdered queen. And maybe, just maybe, to a brighter future that refuses to die. If you enjoyed this tale and want to see what dangers await them in the vault, hit that subscribe button so you don't miss the next chapter. Leave a like if you believe small acts of kindness can change galaxies, and share this video with someone who loves epic sci-fi adventures as much as you do. Until next time, stay safe among the stars.